And when you don't have that time to sort of go in and refine and retouch and take the extra time, how do you decide what is the most important out of a painting to quickly get it done, but also reveal what you want to reveal?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's kind of like sometimes I'll decide ahead of time, and then sometimes maybe we're 3 hours into it and we've got an hour left, and I'll say, okay, maybe I just want to focus on the face, or maybe it depends on what the model is wearing. Maybe I want to try to tackle the lace that they're wearing, to try to achieve that, or depending on which shapes I'm seeing, maybe I just want to paint the big shapes of value and just kind of keep it an exercise at that. I think it depends on what the model is what they're wearing, what the setup looks like. And then, I kind of have to just wing it on the spot and see. Yeah. I think there's various factors that impact that for sure.
Yeah. And another thing that I wanted to ask about, I mentioned it a little bit in the intro for your interview, and it was brushstroke. Something that when I look at paintings personally, I don't know how many people do, but I feel like the brushstroke, the visibility of it, the width, how wild, for lack of a better word, it is, can tell a lot about the painter. And you've got you allow the brushstroke to exist, but in certain areas you're more refined, take that away, and then it sort of tapers off. Paint really thins. So how do you manipulate your paint in a way to give you this variation of like depths and fields and thicknesses and
right? Yeah, I think it depends. Like those portraits, it could be a couple of things. It could be, how much paint am I mixing with the paint? It could be the pressure, how hard am I pressing? You press harder, you get a thicker stroke. You press lighter, you get a thinner stroke. Just like when you're drawing, you have a lighter touch, you have a thinner line, and heavier touch, you get a thicker line. So these are all things to kind of think about. And then I do think about it's arm movement too. How much arm movement, how quick are you making the stroke? That all does impact it. For sure. Yeah. And then some of my work is really tight, especially my older pieces from like my 20s to early 30s was like, it's really tight. I got some work back from a gallery and I pulled out the paintings. I hadn't seen them in a while. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, they were so clean and so tight. I was like, man, I used to paint like that. Like, that's kind of wild. And it just seems like as I'm getting older, I'm loosening up a little bit more, which I think tends to happen if you do kind of look over the course of history and you look at different, painters and you look at how they started and then eventually they kind of loosen up. I don't know why that is. It just seems to happen.
Yeah.
But there's definitely like a certain kind of energy about seeing that brushwork rather than something really tight and clean.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think it's one of the cool things about oil paints too, is that there's almost no limit on what you can do. You can get so many different feels, levels of refinement, thicknesses, thinnesses. I mean, you can really manipulate the paint to how you want to present it. Whereas I think with something like, say, acrylic, you're ultimately going to be limited, or you're going to be working a lot harder to achieve an effect that's just kind of natural with oils.
Yeah, what's nice about the oil paint is already it's so thick and buttery, right? So if you want to paint with it really thick, you can do that. And then if you want to thin it out, you can also do that. But yeah, the acrylics, I mean, unless you're using like a heavy body, it's kind of thick, but it's not like the oil paint.
I'm so excited for this hang sesh!